What is happening, my friends? It is Monday, October 24th, and this is episode number 670. And I have a rare day off here on the Marcus King Rock and Comedy Tour. We have 3 dates left. And I am coming to you from, let me get this right, where am I? I am in Charlottesville. Beautiful. Walked around out there. Unbelievable weather. Been getting so lucky on this tour. I have not wore a jacket the entire tour. And 3 dates left. And I think I'm going to keep that stretch going. We got Charlotte, North Carolina tomorrow night. Birmingham, Alabama, and the tour ends in New Orleans. And I am going to miss these guys. I'm going to miss everybody on the tour. The crew, the bus drivers, the bands, Ashland Kraft, Neil Francis, and, of course, the entire Marcus King Band. All of those guys I will miss, and I will never forget this tour. This time this week, I will be back home and getting ready for a residency at the Comedy Cellar in Las Vegas, and then pop back out on some of those Bill Burr dates and some Philly dates at Soul Joel's. I'll be headlining those. All tour dates, DeanDelRey.com. I want to thank everybody, especially some of the Del Raisers, the Patreoners that have been coming out to the shows. I cannot thank you enough. It's been incredible to see you guys face to face. Played a lot of states and cities I've never been in. So that was amazing. Patreon.com/DeanDelRey if you want bonus episodes. If you want some Zooming, you want to Zoom. And if you just want to support the podcast. Thank you so much, all of you Patreoners out there. Very cool. Okay, let's get into the guest today. Today on the podcast is Mr. Michael Sweet. He is the lead singer, lead guitar player, songwriter of the long-going band Stryper. Now, I have often said that I don't have anybody on the podcast that hasn't inspired me in life or moved me in some kind of way. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I was not a Stryper fan growing up, but I wanted to talk to Michael because their new record is pretty kick-ass. And when somebody releases something almost 40 years in their career that's actually killing it, you know, I wanted to talk to him. 40 years in the business. Right there alone, you're going to learn something from somebody that's been doing what they love for 40 years. Playing music. New record out, The Final Battle, came out 3 days ago, and it's number 1 on the iTunes. And, you know, go check it out, man. This thing sounds like Judas Priest Painkiller era, which is pretty damn cool. And he was great to talk to, man. You know, when you're young, you're like, oh, these guys are Jesus dudes. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like into Jesus and God and stuff in bands that you love and you just don't know. So who knows, you know, but it was great to talk to him. And I know you guys are going to enjoy this, man, to hear about Stryper, how they started and, you know, back there in the 80s, grinding it out on the Sunset Strip, loving Van Halen. And jumping into the game, getting a record deal. Yeah, sold almost 10 million records. So pretty damn cool. Thank you, Michael Sweet, for doing the show. And go see him at the Whiskey here next week, I believe. Also want to give a shout out to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for letting us take another VIP tour. The Marcus King Band and I went over to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yesterday. Had a great time. Then did the Cleveland show at the Agora. And just a great day in Cleveland all around. I hope you guys are good. Hope to see you in Las Vegas. Hope to see you in Philly. Hope to see you at the Comedy Store. I'll be at the Comedy Store all this week, or next week, that is. Can't wait. Until then, my friends, the candles are lit. Here he is, Michael Sweet. How are you, man? Where are you?
I'm good. I'm in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and we're building a house, and it's a long story, but we're kind of going back and forth from one place to another. My daughter just moved out. It's been crazy. But anyway, we're building a house, and we're slowly moving into that house.
In Massachusetts still?
In Plymouth, yep.
Wow. What made you move out there from California?
Well, moved there in 95, wanted to raise our kids in a different place. Having grown up in California, I felt like it wasn't a great area, especially at that time, even though we lived in a nice neighborhood in Fullerton. It just wasn't where we wanted to raise our kids, you know? So we moved back here. My wife at the time, Kyle, she was from this area. And I've been here since 95. So this is home to me, even more so now than California.
Wow. I always like to ask people, because I'm born and raised in California. And I always ask different people, because I travel as a comedian. And, you know, you get to some states and you're like, oh, I could live here, but you never really know till you dive in and do it.
That's the thing. You never know till you do it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It worked for me. You know, I really like the winters are pretty cold and pretty brutal, but I actually like them. I like going from summer into fall, which right now the leaves are all turning and the temperatures are dropping a little bit. And then we'll go into winter and get some snow. And I really enjoy that. It just changes things up a little bit, you know, and makes it interesting.
Well, it's funny to think about back in the day, you know, now with the internet, YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, you can really kind of start a band anywhere and maybe get some traction if you have some luck. But back then you had to move to LA to play in that, you know, in that Sunset Strip area, right?
If you wanted to break where things are breaking, or if you want to break where things are breaking, yeah, you kind of need to be there in the center of it all. And we just happened to be there because we lived there. You know, we grew up I was born in Whittier, lived in La Mirada, Fullerton. We jumped in the car, and in 35 minutes, we were on Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, Santa Monica Boulevard. So we were right there in the heart of it. And once we formed a band and started writing and recording, we just went knocking on doors down on the streets of LA, and started getting gigs at Gazzari's, Troubadour, the Whiskey. And it was pretty interesting. You know, we started really young. I mean, I think the first time I played the Whiskey, I want to say I just turned 16. So we started really, really young. My brother was 19. He's 3 years older than me. So, but for me, it was, you know, I was a kid, and playing the Whiskey and the Troubadour. So I look back on that and I think, gosh, I was very fortunate to be in that scene at that time.
Were you going and hanging out at the clubs too and seeing stuff like Shark Island and Rat and all those bands that were kind of really grinding it out there, Motley Crue? Were you seeing any of that?
All those bands. Shark Island, we played with often at Gazzari's. We played with Mickey Rat, who became Rat. They were a house band, and we were a house band at Gazzari's many times on the same night, Friday or Saturday night. Saw Motley Crue. We performed, walked down the street and watched Motley Crue perform. Saw Guns N' Roses before they broke. Wasp. I mean, the list goes on and on. Quiet Riot. You go back further. Before I started playing the clubs, I saw Quiet Riot. I saw Yesterday and Today.
Oh yeah.
At the Starwood. So I was in that scene. You know, we got to experience it, live it, see it firsthand, and it was really amazing.
Yeah, I was in that too. And I just don't think that people really understand the magnitude of how you would go down to Sunset Strip on any night and there would be thousands of people just out on the street and millions of flyers on the poles and, you know, bands just handing out flyers. It was wild, man, to see that.
It was wild. And, you know, it was a time too, where I always joke about this on stage. You had to be careful if you were a straight guy, you know, because you'd be calling out to who you thought was a beautiful girl and it was a beautiful guy, you know? So yeah, A lot of guys with their hair up and their makeup on and their tight clothes on and everything. It was just a really unique time and scene. And it was an explosion, really.
Yeah.
Because as you said, you go down there now and it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Where are all the people? It feels really odd to me, like almost the end of the world or something. You go, back to 1981, 82, and you go down to where Gazzari's and the Roxy are. Gazzari's was, and it literally, it was like 6 people wide marching down the street. I mean, just tons of people. It was explosive and intense and insane. And what a time. It'll never be repeated again.
Well, I don't think I've really seen it happen with any type of thing. That's what's really interesting to me. I'm 56, you're 59, but I haven't seen anything where there were thousands of people other than maybe Studio 54 and the disco scene in New York, where there was just thousands of people every night. Like there's just no thought of a job tomorrow. It was, we're living for tonight, and everybody was out of the house.
And it was insane. It was amazing. It was just a really special time, and all the dots connected right there at that place. And, people talk about the scene they had in Baltimore, the scene they had, in Boston, or the scene they had in other areas. But man, they have no idea what the scene was like in LA. You had to be there to believe it.
Yeah.
See it to believe it. And it was just insane. And we were there. And I look back on that, being able to grow up during that special time. It made me who I am today. It made us who we are today. So thank God we were at right time, right place.
Well, there is an interesting thing also about it, to where it really, I think, scarred a lot of people. I would say about 90% of the people, which I call kind of hair metal tumbleweeds, where they're just kind of like blown around, like what happened? They never really grew as a person, and they just live for those like 5 years of their life, which was so long ago now. Isn't that wild?
It is wild. And, without naming names, I don't like to do that, but I know I have a few faces popping into my head. And what you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's kind of sad to see, it is almost like they never grew up and they never moved on. And they're 60 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
61, 62. And you're just thinking, wow, what happened, man, to these guys? But, just the fact that they're still alive is miraculous. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are dead and gone. And the fact that those guys are still here and cleaned up and getting help and whatnot, it's really good to see.
Yeah. I think that it could be maybe just the energy and the adrenaline of that era. It's almost like a cocaine high, where they were just running on such a high gear of like, look at this, to now where they're just kind of like, like skydiving. I've skydived before. And then you're like, well, there's nothing ever going to be like that. It's the pure lunacy,
Yeah, totally, completely. And I think too, we as human beings fall into traps and become, creatures of habit. It becomes a habit, and it's hard to break that habit. And that goes for whether it's drugs or lifestyle. We're all susceptible to that. And I've seen some guys where it's like, oh man, you just kind of shake your head, and you really do feel bad for them. It's like, man, maybe someday they'll grow up. Maybe when they hit 82 or 92.
You hope they hit 92. Oh man, it's wild. Let me talk to you a little bit about, I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and was a booker of the Stone. Me and my good friend Jimmy Arsenault, who was a huge Stryper fan, played in a band called Soldier. I don't know if you remember them, but
I do.
Wow. That's kind of cool. But we had you played the Stone in 85 and 90. Do you remember the Stone at all?
I do remember the Stone. And what's going on with the Stone these days? I assume it's gone.
Oh yeah, it closed about 93, I believe. John Nady, who owned Nady Wireless, had owned those 3 clubs, which was the Omni, the Stone, and the One Step Beyond. And he closed them, just mostly because of I think he wanted to kind of move on in life, and that was kind of a different era starting to happen. There was less club bands, but San Fran and California in general just had a mega club scene where you could play all over California and it would be a tour.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Even to a smaller degree, San Diego, so many areas, but LA, like we've been discussing, I mean, that whole hair metal explosion, 78, 9, 80, 81, 82, more so 81, 82, 83. It was just wild, and I'm thinking about it now and it's all coming back. And I went down there every weekend. There were times when I didn't have a car and I would literally get a ride from a friend and they'd drop me off and I wouldn't have a ride home. And I didn't care.
Not at all. Not at all.
I didn't care. I'd always find a ride home. I'd meet someone and they'd give me a ride home. They were gracious enough to give me a ride home. But those were some really amazing times, very special times.
When you guys, I don't remember if I read this somewhere or saw it somewhere, maybe about 5 years ago, but was there a woman manager or somebody that really started to get you guys going into the Christian thing and changing that whole flavor of the band? Am I right on that?
Yeah, we originally, way back, we had a woman who was helping us by the name of Vicki Hamilton.
Yeah, Vicki, that's right. I had her on the podcast and then I read her book. Yeah, that's why I read that. Yeah.
Vicki Hamilton was helping us way back. I don't know if I'd say she was our quote unquote manager, but I guess she was briefly. And then we eventually wound up meeting a woman by the name of Darren Hinton. And Darren, her family grew up in Bel Air, and she had some money and she wanted to invest some money into the band. And she really liked the band and fell in love with what we were doing and what we were all about. And she did. She gave us $100,000. We invested. We bought new equipment. We bought billboards, paid for advertising to promote the band, paid for our first album, all sorts of things. And she really was so integral and important in the history and the making of the band. And then Darren wound up co-managing the band with my mom.
Wow.
And herself.
Wow, your mom was the manager.
My mom was, man. She managed us for a while. And then we realized, my mom did a really great job, but we realized like we were getting to a point where we were playing arenas and became bigger. And we felt like we needed someone bigger to manage us, So we wound up going with Danny Goldberg and Ron Stone at Gold Mountain. And that was, even though they were obviously world-renowned and brilliant managers, it didn't work for us, and we were with them for a short period of time. I think it was like a year, if that.
And then who do you go with after that?
After that, we took some time off. I left the band.
Oh, that's right.
In 1992. Yeah, I left. And I was basically planning on retiring for a while. So between 92 and 96, I just took time off. I did release a solo album in 94, but for the first 2 years, 92 and 93, I didn't do anything except bake cakes for my kids, elementary school classes, walk them to school, go to soccer games, softball games, dance class. That's all I did. And I realized the importance of family and the importance of being a dad. Even though I wasn't the best dad, I tried to be. And when I say the best dad, I mean, I was gone all the time. We were touring, for To Hell with the Devil. We were literally gone on and off for over a year. I missed out on a year of my kids' lives, and I, even though the music is fun and we love what we do, you should never put your band above your family. I don't care who you are.
It's wild to think about because I'm 56 and I'm out on a tour right now. I'm out here in, Salina, Kansas on a day off. And I have not done a 34 date tour in years. And I'm like, this is too long. It's like, I'm a comedian. I usually go out on Thursdays and to a city, do 3-4 shows and then come back. But this is 34 straight. And I look at it as, as you get older, you're 59, you think about back in the day, like I was gone one time for 10 months.
Oh, I
And
know.
I don't even know how I did that.
I mean, I literally flew in from my first child's birth and then flew out a few days later. I was just gone all the time. And I didn't think much about it then because we were so caught up in the whirlwind of, the fame and the fortune and the band breaking and all that stuff. But, when you look back on it, if I could go back in time, I probably would have changed things. I do have some regrets about life and decisions I made. But at the same time, it's shaped me and made me who I am. I've learned a lot from it. But I don't recommend going out for long periods of time. If you're a family person, I don't recommend that at all. I don't do it anymore. We go out 2 weeks at a time, at most 3 weeks, and even that's pushing it.
I understand what you're saying. I grew up with a father not around. So, and he wasn't touring, he just wasn't around. So that's
Right.
why I never had kids. I knew I didn't want to put somebody and put them into a insane world that I was in of like, you're at baseball and your dad's not there and your mom's not there because she has to work. So it's I don't have any regrets on it because it really formed who I am as an artist. But yeah, man, if you do have an option, I think there's and touring's different now though too, with like FaceTime and stuff. At least you can see it. Back then it was like a payphone.
I know it is different with technology. It's a little easier. But the thing is, it's tough too, is being older. We're all 60-ish. When we go out, we just did a run. We went out and we got 3 minivans. We drove ourselves to the venues. We had 4 in a row. Wow. And we were getting up at 4 in the morning, driving 8 hours. And I'm going to tell you, man, we came home from that. We're like, ugh. We were beat up.
Wow. No buses or anything. You're just driving yourselves. That is gnarly.
When we do short little runs, we'll do that. Now, when we do a longer run, which we did this year, we toured for 5 weeks. We were on a bus,
right,
pulling a trailer. Yeah, and that's a lot easier because you can at least sleep. When we do these little mini runs in minivan, it's brutal. And then you get on a plane, and we flew to Costa Rica and early morning flights, and it just like you come home and you're just thinking like, oh my gosh. And then you say that publicly and the fans are like, what do you mean, you're a rock star, you got it made? And I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Back in those days, because I was a singer for 25 years, when you were on those long tours, because your voice is absolutely fantastic right now, and it has been throughout what I've seen your career, was there any pockets where you had vocal problems, maybe some nodes, or your voice was just trashed, or was it always just, like how it is right now? I mean, this new record, you sound unreal.
Oh man. Well, thank you. That's really kind of you to say. I always have vocal problems. I mean, I've never had surgery. I've never had nodes or nodes or polyps. I've never had anything like that on my vocal cords. I get my cords checked every couple of years. The only thing that I have, and they always say they look great, they look pristine. The only problem I have is I have a really thick postnasal drip. So I'm always going, I've got heavy mucus on my cords all the time. The doctors feel that protected my vocal cords, because they said my vocal cords look young, in great shape. But with age, your cords, like your muscles, they start to stiffen a little bit and they change over time. And I've just chosen my battles. I've learned how to pick and choose what I'm going to do. And, when I get sick out on the road, there's nothing I can do, like any other singer. You got something in your throat and your chest, you're in trouble. Get through it. You tough it out and get through it. And I've had to go to the doctor and get the prednisone steroid crap and the inhaler and all that stuff. I've had to do that multiple times over the years just to get through the show. But I'm very blessed and fortunate that I can still sing and accomplish and do what I want to do for the most part. My voice has changed a little bit, but not so much so that I can't sing anymore,
Yeah. There's definitely guys out there that had no idea in 1981 that they were going to be out touring right now. And some of them really can't even sing anymore, which is it's pretty brutal because they might have been ripped off from the record company and manager, and they have to be out there. And then you got websites that are just blasting them like this guy can't sing. And, it's really harsh.
It's so harsh, dude. I feel bad for people that are going through that. I've gone through it to a degree. If I have a bad night and, I'm not hitting the notes right or not hitting them at all or whatever, people just crucify you. And that's the beauty of the internet these days. That's the world we live in. Nothing you can do about it. You just got to let it kind of roll off, and move on. And that's the way it is. But, some of these guys can't sing at all anymore. They're literally going out and singing down an octave or just talking through the melodies. Oh. And I would say if I ever get to that point, and I may, I hope not, but if I do, I'm going to stop singing. I will not sing anymore at that point because I'm going to end on a higher note versus a lower note. And the good thing I've got going for me is I'm a guitar player as well as a singer. So if that happens with my voice, I'll just play guitar and stand in the background and try to come up with some poser moves, and we'll get a young, fresh singer,
Early on when you were shopping around for a deal, I know you guys were on Enigma, but then it was Hollywood Records. At any point, did they ever say, hey, man, get rid of this God stuff and you're going to be way bigger? Were they forcing that on you at all?
They did not. That was the beautiful thing about Enigma Records is they didn't. They allowed us to do what we wanted to do and be who we wanted to be. Now, initially, when we did a showcase for them, they couldn't understand the words. And when we submitted the lyrics after they said, we'll sign you, we're interested, we submitted the lyrics, they did have a problem with that. They did come back and say, whoa, wait a minute. The lyrics you guys are singing about Jesus? What is this? And we're like, yeah, how could you not hear that? Jesus is the way, literally live. It's like, that always blew my mind. Like, how in the world did you not hear that? But literally every song was like, Jesus and God. And it's funny. But we submitted the lyrics. They had a problem with it. And then we talked to them about it. And they didn't have a problem with it. They're like, yeah, you know what? Cool. Let's do this. We love the band. We love the songs. And obviously we proved them wrong because when the first album came out, it exploded. It sold, I want to say 150,000 copies as an EP in 84, like in a week.
Oh my God.
Which for a small time band that hadn't done anything, that blew their minds. They were like, what in the world? And then the next album came out and went gold. And then that was it. When we used to go in and have to wait an hour to see the execs there. By that time, when To Hell came out, we'd go in and literally they'd be rolling out a carpet and have wine and, candles burning. And it was funny.
They were even talking religion. Hey, we got our Bible, man. Thank God for Stryper. Saving Enigma.
Because they were killing it. Tale of the Devil sold multi-platinum. And by that time, they were like, oh, my word. You guys are getting so big that we got to bring in capital to help us. And they did. They signed a deal with Capital for distribution. And then that was where it just really took off and exploded. 87, 88, 89.
Now, you're not one of those guys, do you believe, because In God We Trust came out and it kind of didn't do well, but it was also right there where the quote unquote grunge was coming in. I don't believe that grunge killed that hair metal scene. I believe that it had run its course. The labels had signed too much garbage, and also scenes changed. So are you wanting to think back now that In God We Trust maybe wasn't that good of an album? Because a lot of bands, I say, well, at that era your record just wasn't that good, or the label didn't promote it. There's two different things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's my thoughts. Well, we had Tell the Devil, which was multi-platinum, and then we had In God We Trust, which went platinum.
Right.
Now, the album I think you're thinking of is Against the Law.
Got you.
That came out in 91. That's when grunge really started kicking into gear. And that album did not do well. That album didn't go gold. It to this day, it isn't gold. And what's interesting about that album is, when I talk about it, some fans really get up in arms about it because to some fans, it's their favorite album against the law. And I think my only thought on that is those are probably fans that became fans with that album. And they hold with it very special memories. And there's the nostalgia that it brings to the table. But as an album itself, it's produced brilliantly. Tom Wehrman, amazing. Eddie
Great.
Delaney near it, killer sounding album. But it's not Stryper. It doesn't sound, if you listen to that album and then go back and listen to all the earlier albums, it sounds like a different band. You're going to hear little similarities in the vocal style and whatnot, but it sounds like a different band, good or bad, love it or hate it. More almost Van Halen sounding, Van Halen album than Stryper. And I think we lost a lot of our fans during that time. I don't think grunge killed us. I think some people would say it did. But then how can you argue the fact that Firehouse broke during that time? Who was hair metal and poppy and ballads, and they broke at that time. Slaughter broke during that time. If it was grunge, they wouldn't have broken. And, so I think it was that album. We made poor decisions. We changed our colors, changed our sound, changed our look, changed everything, became a completely different band. We should have changed the name of the band as well. Then we might have broke again.
I mean, but that's what makes a great band. Coming up on like 40 years now, when you're looking back, you're like, hey, man, a lot of people hate Aerosmith Done with Mirrors. I think it's one of their greatest records. And there's just different eras in a band's career if they're around long enough, other than like, say, AC/DC or the Ramones, where,
Sure.
That's their sound. But there's bands that have taken chances or changed and they go up that didn't work. But you have to, check out other avenues, whether it be record company influenced or band members influenced. You always get band members that are like, hey, I'm tired of the black and yellow. Let's try something else, and I get it.
I agree. I do agree with that. You got to take chances. But at the same time, like, you go back to like when Kiss lost their makeup, right?
Right.
That was such a definable part, integral part of who they are and were and should be. And you take that away and you're like, why did they take that away? That doesn't make any sense. So they obviously ultimately put it back on because it's such a big part of Kiss. Same thing with the Against the Law album. I felt like the yellow and black is such a big part of who we are, love it or hate it. And the sound, the guitar tone from those earlier albums, the style of writing, the music. And I think like we changed it up a little too much. That's just, again, my personal opinion. Not everyone would agree with that. But, I think numbers don't lie. It is our worst selling album of all time, literally.
Right. Can you take me back to when you did Dynamo? That had to be pretty special. Dynamo being one of the biggest festivals in rock and roll and metal. And that had to be pretty special, right? Going to Europe, playing Dynamo.
Yeah, it was a little scary. I mean, because I remember playing that festival and the crowd not liking it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they wanted to kill us and they were chanting expletives and it was pretty scary at the time. But we wound up changing the set list. We lost First Love. Yeah, let's take that out of the set. Let's put in the Rock That Makes Me Roll instead. We made it more metal. We went and played and we won the crowd over and they wound up really loving the band.
Wow. That's wild to think about. That has to be scary. I'm out on this tour right now, a comedian opening up for a rock band. And I don't usually do that, but I love this band that I'm out with, Marcus King Band. And there's nights where they're just like, nah. And you figure it out, You
do. You figure it out. And we that has to happen all the time for us. Like, we're playing a festival and then we were opening for Wasp, and then all of a sudden they changed the order, and we're opening for Anthrax.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, okay, let's change the set list a little bit here. You know what I mean? So it's those things happen, and you do figure it out. And there have been some times and situations though where it's been pretty rough, man. We've been in fear for our lives and thinking like, how are we going to get out of this one? And we always do. We always make it through.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was not a Stryper fan growing up because mostly because of the Jesus thing. But I really got turned on to you by when I went out to see Boston.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew you were in the group, and you came out and you absolutely killed it. And I was like, wow, man, this guy's great. And you were smoking it, your voice, your guitar playing. And, you know, on the new record, I'm listening to the new record and I'm like, wow, man, this could be Judas Priest Painkiller era songs, you know, super heavy, tons of amazing guitar playing, great vocals, great songs. There's bands out there right now, heavy bands that couldn't even compete with this record you're about to drop, which is, you know, with their new records. And it's interesting to hear how all these years you've been still kicking ass, which is cool.
Well, you know what, man, nothing gets in our way. That's kind of the mentality in this band, especially my mentality of, you know, if I get into a fight and I put the gloves on and get in the ring, even though the guy might be beating the crap out of me and he knocks me down, I'm going to get up. Knocks me down, I'm going to get up. I'm going to be that guy that keeps getting up all the way to the 12th round. And you're just going, how is this guy how does he still get up? Look at him, you know, he's pulverized. That's the mentality with this band. It doesn't matter what's said about us, what's done against us. I don't care. You know, we get no radio airplay at all. Does it matter? No, doesn't matter, because you can't stop the machine. You can't stop the bullet train going 120 miles an hour down the track. And Stryper's a bullet train. And we've been going for almost 40 years. No one's going to tell us we can't do it and that we shouldn't do it. And that's going to make us want to do it even more so. And we're driven. I'm a very driven person. And I think that's increasing as I get older. I really believe our best is yet to come. We have not released our best album yet. That day will come, but it hasn't yet.
What was it like being in Boston with that guy from the Home Depot? Because when I saw it, you could tell he was a Home Depot guy. He hit the notes, but boy, was he up there like, whoa, we're in, like, I mean, it was at the Universal Amphitheater. It was huge. And he was like, whoa, there's people out there. You know, it's a lot different than doing karaoke. What was it like? Would you give that guy tips each night? And Tom Schultz, were you guys just like rallying around him? How did that work?
Well, what happened with that, I've talked a little bit about, but I'll talk more about with you. Yeah, I was that guy that they came to try to help mold Tommy and shape him into a quote unquote rock star, you know?
Right.
Came out originally in a wife beater t-shirt and baggy jeans, short hair. I think he had a little mustache and a bottle of water on a stand. And he was drinking that water like in between every line, you know? And just nervous. And I get it. I was nervous too. But Tommy's a sweetheart. He's a great guy and a good friend, although we haven't stayed in touch as much as I'd like to. Really good friend. So I literally took him out shopping. I was the guy that would take him out shopping for clothes that made him look cooler. And I helped kind of shape him into who he is and what he is today. And I became that guy. And Kim and Tom and management would come to me and say, can you do this? And I would do it. But yeah, it was just a unique situation because that became the Home Depot tour. Everything was orange, you know, there were aprons everywhere and signs everywhere. And I'm just thinking, this is Boston. Boston doesn't need Home Depot.
Yeah.
If anything, Home Depot needs Boston, you know, and it's weird to me. It's like every interview Tommy would do, it was about Home Depot. And it was a little embarrassing at times. Not for him, because I get it. They found this guy on the internet. He worked at Home Depot. I get it. That's a story. But it was just like, after a while, it was like, okay, we get it. Enough of that story already, because it's Boston. They're legendary. You don't need that. Almost like a gimmick. What really upset me is at the end of the tour, when Tommy went to go get his job back at Home Depot, they wouldn't give him his job back.
What?
Yeah, he went to go get his job back and they denied him his job. And I felt like, wow, I literally did not step foot in a Home Depot. And I was at Home Depot all the time looking at light bulbs. I have a weird thing about light bulbs. I was there all the time, OCDing over light bulbs. And I didn't go there for like a year and a half. I refused to go there. I'm like, these guys are the worst.
What was the reason? Do you know?
They just wouldn't give him his job back. I don't recall, but I remember talking to Tom and him being really distraught about it. And like, wow, I can't even get my job back. I was there for so many years. And they promised him they would give him his job back.
The crazy thing about that right now is people listening to this podcast are like, he just went out and did a full Boston tour. Why would he need his job back? I'm sure he made $8 million. Well, people don't know.
He didn't make 8 million. We made more than we thought, but it wasn't as much as you'd think.
Right.
But that being said, the reason why he needed his job back is because Boston didn't tour every year. So we toured in 2008, and then in 2009, they didn't tour. And then in 2010, they didn't tour. And Tommy needed a job again. He was in a position where he needed a job, and he went to go get his old job back. And the place that we promoted for the whole tour, and they wouldn't give him his job back.
Garbage people.
I just felt like, I don't know what it was about that, but that set so wrong. I mean, it really angered me. I was so mad about that.
Especially like Home Depot. Like, it's not like a corporate job or something, it's Home Depot, hey, show me where the 2x4s are. Yeah. Right over here. I mean, who wouldn't want it? I'm going to the Home Depot where the Boston singer works. Who's not doing that?
I agree, man. I didn't get it. Now, in all fairness, he might have eventually gotten his job back later on. Right. But I remember he went and tried for a while, and they said, no. And we would have conversations about it. And he was upset, and I was upset. And then obviously he's still in the band Boston. So they wound up touring again and touring quite a few times since. I don't know if they're ever going to tour again. I don't know that as fact, but I can only assume because they haven't toured for 3 years, maybe 4. And Tom's, I think, 75 or 6 now. And he didn't like touring anyway. Tom did not like touring. I had to talk him into touring a few times when he wanted to cancel the tour.
How about Gary Peel? How great is that guy?
He's a great guy, great player, very level-headed, sweetheart, became dear friends with him and his wife. I'll never forget, I was the guy who introduced everyone on stage. And I did this for a while. And one night, Gary comes up to me on stage and whispers in my ear, "Hey, Michael, it's not Tom Schultz. It's Tom Scholes." While we're playing like foreplay or something. And I remember just sitting there going, what? I was announcing him with the T as Tom Schultz.
I always did.
It's Scholes.
Wow. Now, who was the woman? She was fantastic on bass. So, like, what was her background? Was she a Boston musician or what? I don't know her, and she was great.
Yeah, her name is Kimberly Dom, and she, I believe, is living in Nashville now. I don't know where she's originally from, but Tom met her before I was in the band. She was doing a gig in the Northeast somewhere, and he went and saw her perform and really liked her talent. And hired her. And she became a member of the band before I joined the band. And she was great. I mean, really great player, great singer, great person. And then, once I left the band, not long after that, Tracy Ferry, who was our old bass player, wound up becoming a member of the band. Kimberly's awesome. She's the real deal, man. And why they replaced her or why she left, I'll never understand that, because I thought she was perfect and great.
Yeah. I saw Boston on the Boston 3 record, and I'm still questioning if it was piped in audience or it was the loudest crowd I've ever heard. I've seen thousands of shows, literally, but they played the Oakland Arena. They came on and the audience was screaming so loud. I was like, what is going on here? You know, like I felt like I needed earplugs for the audience.
Well, I tell you, it's usually, even if you have an audience that size, if you mic it properly, or so you think, it still doesn't sound quite like it should. And usually they pipe in a little bit of extra audience noise, you know, just to make it sound a little more exciting, you know. I know Kiss did. Those are all secrets of the trade.
Well, yeah, on the live records, of course, you know, Kiss used like Super Bowl 13 or whatever, of course.
But you mean live in person?
Yeah, dude, I was at the show and it was insane how loud the crowd was after each song. I was like, wow.
That was probably just real deal, man. I tell you, I've experienced that a couple of times going overseas in certain countries, like Puerto Rico, for example. Stryper's performed and the crowd was so loud. It didn't seem real, you know?
You got a great guitar tone and you're a great player. You really were around during the height of the Charvel era. What was your guitar of choice back then? And you've always played some wacky shapes. Right now in the new video, you've got kind of a small, weird looking mini V that's almost like that Hamer KK Downing era one. But were you a heavy Charvel guy back in the day, pre-Jackson?
Oh, yeah. I've always been a Jackson guy. I mean, back when Darren Hinton invested that money into the band, my first thing to do, because she said, let's go buy you some new gear. I went down to Guitar Center Santa Ana and I purchased a new guitar that had just come out. And it was a white Jackson Randy Rhoads V.
Wow. A
with
Concord.
Gold heart. Yeah. And this was back in 1983. And I bought that guitar and that's what I played. My brother taped it up with yellow and black tape, put Man of War on it, varnish. And eventually once we signed a deal with Jackson, just a year later, Grover painted that guitar for me. And I have it to this day. It was stolen. I got it back. And I have it to this day with the original paint and everything.
Wow. You still have it.
I got it back, man. I don't know how, but a guy sent me a photo. He bought it illegally. He didn't know it. Sent me a photo, said, I love your guitar. You know, thanks for having this guitar made. And I said, man, that was stolen. I'd like to get it back. And I got it back.
Were you a hardtail guy or Kaylor or Floyd Rose?
Hardtail and Floyd.
Right.
I did have a guitar or two with Kaylor system. I didn't care for, because with those systems, the ones I had in particular, I could never pull up. It was always just dive down.
Right.
And with the Floyd's being floating, the way I have mine set up, I can, you know, I do a lot of vibrato with my Floyd and it works great. I love it. But I love hardtail as well. I've got a bunch of guitars with no trim system at all. And I love those. I'm so used to having it there though, you know, and my hand hitting it, and it's like a part of my guitar. And when it's not there, it's a little odd.
What about amps? What are your amps? Were you a Marshall guy, Boogie back then? Are you into boutique amps like Matchless or anything now?
I'll tell you, I started off when I heard the first Boston album when I was 13. Not long after that, I started going to pawn shops and trying to seek out my own tone. And I wound up eventually, when I was 15, almost 16, I wound up purchasing I was 16. I wound up purchasing a Lab Series L11 head.
Wow. I remember those, man.
Yeah. And I remember Montrose, Ronnie used those. So I thought those are great amps. I always loved his tone. And then I found out BB used them, and a number of guys used them. Alan Holdsworth used them at one point in time. And I saw that it had a little frequency, a parametric EQ, semi-parametric. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I bought it, brought it home, wound up eventually preamping, coming out of the preamp out of that into a Marshall. And that was instant Stryper tone.
Wow.
Like instantly. And I used to hide that head when we'd play with Rat at Gazzari. All the guys would come up, Robin would come up and say, man, how are you getting that tone? And I would say, it's that modded Marshall. And I'd have the Lab Series hiding behind the back.
I love it.
I didn't like lugging it around because it was a head. So I wound up eventually finding what was called a Furman PQ3, parametric EQ. I bought that when I was 17, almost 18 at Whittier Music. And I started preamping my Mesa Boogie Mark II Cs with that. And that's when it morphed into the tone you hear on Soldiers Under Command.
What about on the new record? Because it's really, I got to give you, I got to commend you on the sound of this record, because there are some bands that have dropped records recently that were recorded during COVID that just do not sound good. It's all compressed and small. And that's almost impossible to get a shitty tone these days with how great Pro Tools and all the plugins are. So I don't know who's listening to these, but your record sounds incredibly violent and brutal. Great attack on the guitars and the drums.
Well, good, man. That's awesome to hear. We're always trying to get better with each album and improve from the last. But I tell you what we did on this album that was a little different from the others. We always mic'd a cabinet, a speaker, always. This time around, we did not. For all the rhythm sounds, it's a Captor X, 2 notes that we're going into with the head. And the head is a EVH, the 50-watt EL34 EVH, gold and black. And I'm preamping the front of that with a Tech 21 Q strip. So it's a single band parametric EQ pedal. And I'm going into the front of the EVH, and then I went out of the EVH, and in the effects loop, I had a decimator, noise gate, ISP, and I had another EQ, a Dunlop EQ, to kind of shape the EQ a little bit post. And then I went into the Captor X, the head right into that, and we did not feed a speaker cabinet. We went direct.
Wow.
And with the Captor X, you're able to go in, and there's software with that. You can really fine tune the EQ, the distance, the mics used, the cabs used, all that stuff. And that's the tone you're hearing, man. And I did a track, and then Oz did a track. So 2 rhythms. And on some of the songs have 3 rhythms, 1 up the middle, 1 left, 1 right. And then on some of the songs, I did a track, and then I did the second track. You know, like Ashes to Ashes. I remember Oz had a little trouble playing the riff. You know, that riff. So I double tracked myself, but it's all double track or triple tracked. And that's the tone, man. It's that Stryper tone, adding that EQ 700 to 800 boosted to the front of an amp. A Marshall, Boogie, EVH, whatever amp you want to try, you're going to get that tone.
What's the guitar in the video? The small type V.
Those are Sully's, guy by the name of John Sullivan, who learned how to build guitar and was inspired by Grover. He and Grover actually released a Rhodes style V together recently, in recent times. But John Sullivan builds guitars that are just like the old Jackson.
I talked to Grover Jackson for like 4 hours on the podcast, man. What a history.
Oh, yeah. Crazy stuff. John is Grover again, kind of, I don't want to say reincarnated, but he's like a young Grover, and his passion for guitars, and he's brilliant, and he builds killer guitars. You go to sullyguitars.com, you'll see he builds guitars that kind of have that Firebird look, King V look, Rhodes look. Awesome stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the band. Now, Tim Gaines hasn't been in for years, right?
He hasn't been in since 2016, end of 2016, maybe beginning of 17. That's when we decided to part ways. And that was the 3rd, maybe the 4th time that he had been out of the band. So we have a guy by the name of Perry Richardson now, who used to play for Firehouse that we were talking about earlier.
What's the problem with Tim? Is it personal, or is he just doesn't like to tour, or what's happening there?
I think, I don't know if I'd put it in the term of a problem with Tim. I think just over the years, for whatever reason, things just didn't work out with Tim. I remember the first time we parted ways, it was based on style playing. And I've discussed that, when we got into the studio and we tried to track the bass, we had some drums tracked, some guitars tracked, and it came time to track the bass, and it just didn't feel right. So we made an executive decision, the band. I get the bad rap for that, but in reality and truthfully, it was the entire band that made the decision along with the producer. We decided to bring in a guy by the name of Brad Cobb. We auditioned bass players and Brad got the gig. And we tracked Brad on that album, To Hell with the Devil. And we were looking for a very defined sound, a certain type of sound that's very important. And we got that with Brad. So it was nothing against Tim. We just weren't getting it with Tim. And then, I think that led to him being unhappy and us being unhappy. And eventually he was replaced with a guy by the name of Matt Hurick, who played in Leatherwolf. And that didn't work out. Tim came back, played with us for a while. Then Tim left again. It was just kind of an ongoing thing, but I think it stemmed from that first time that he left.
Well, what's amazing is almost 40 years now that you have 3 members out of the 4. So that's already like 3/4 more than most bands have. You know what I mean?
You're right about that. I remember seeing Foreigner a while back. No disrespect, but there was one original guy on stage.
Oh, it's my biggest problem with Foreigner. And, and I don't knock them. And if people are into that, that's fantastic. But that's a cover band. And
I'm not knocking them either, because they're out there doing it and they're killing it and they sound fantastic. Kelly's one of the best singers ever. And I love Kelly. We used to tour with Hurricane. But yeah, you kind of look at that and you just think, it's different. It's interesting. And it feels odd to me as a fan of Foreigner and being inspired by Foreigner. I get why they have to do that. They don't have the choice, but at the same time, it is weird. But the fans in the audience don't know any better. Holding their beer up, singing along to the songs, they don't care, because I think there's a lot of faceless bands out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially in the 90s, there was a lot of faceless bands.
They don't know. They can't recognize the face. They don't care, but they recognize the song. And that's all they care.
Yep. Yeah, I don't, and it's not really my deal to knock anyone. The way I knock it is I don't buy a ticket for it. That's it. I don't sit there and talk about it. You don't want to see something, you just don't buy the ticket. It's that easy.
I remember, man, I went and saw them. They were playing, I think they were Journey at the time, at the Hollywood Bowl. And I was with my buddy, Brandon Mullally, an actor. He's that guy. You remember the guy in the Adam Sandler movie? He buys the football team and he's doing the "No, Daddy, no." The daddy's whipping him with the belt.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm there with Brandon and I tweeted something about the fact that there wasn't one original guy in the band. And I remember, I think Jeff Pilson saying "ouch," like responding with "ouch," and I felt bad. I didn't mean it as a knock either.
Yeah.
But I got to be careful what I say and how I say it,
Yeah, I had Jeff on the podcast, and that's when I brought it up with him. I said, "Hey, I'm not knocking you." And he's like, "Yeah, you are." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I probably am, but I'm just saying, like, it's kind of weird. Let's just be honest. That's all I'm trying to be, is honest out there,
Oh man, look at it is. And I felt that even with Boston, it was only Tom up there.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're going to have someone, it's got to be Tom. And thank God he was up there. But it still felt like a cover band sometimes to me,
Well, Tom did that whole record in his basement. So I never look at it like that, because it was him and Brad, Yeah. So Brad's gone. And in order to take it on the road, you got to have hired guns when it came to Boston. There was not dudes that were grinding it out in the clubs and doing demos for years. That's a total different thing, So,
totally.
Yeah,
no question. Well, I felt funny sometimes up there because, it didn't have that fire that the old Boston had. And I was in the band and I remember Six coming out and just killing it, man, every night. Even some nights I felt a little ashamed to have to follow that.
Let's get a little bit about Laszlo. I know you got to get out of here, but some health problems. How's Oz doing? He had some brain tumor stuff going on.
He's doing great. He had his surgeries and bounced right back. Doing great, man. And it's so good to see. I had some eye surgeries myself. I'm doing fine. we're in a good place right now. We've been out touring, and we're very thankful for where we're at physically and in terms of health. So it's a good thing right now. A good day right now.
What happened to your ride? Something with the retina or something?
My retina detached, and I laid down for 2 weeks face down. I had to do that whole eating and sleeping face down thing. When I set up, I wrote the album, and then after I wrote the album, it detached again.
Wow. How's that happen?
Well, they said it was hereditary thinning of my retinas. But I had injuries when I was a kid. I had a couple concussions. They said that played a part in it. And then I'm nearsighted. That plays a part because your eyes are longer, they're elongated, and always pulling on your retinas. You're more susceptible to retinal detachment if you're nearsighted.
God, man, I'm glad you're okay. It made for a good look on the video though with the patch. I was digging it. I was like, yeah, coming out full rock,
I'll probably patch out again at some point, but it's interesting. When I first wore it, people were like, why are you wearing that? Now when I'm not wearing it, they're like, why aren't you wearing that? It's like
well, hey man, it was great to talk to you, and congrats on almost 40 years of out there playing rock and roll and metal. And you got a good new record here, man. It kind of blew me away of how heavy it was. And I was surprised because I know Stryper from Honestly and the big ballad and the videos back in the 80s. And this came out and I was like, damn, this is pretty aggressive.
Well, man, I'm telling you, it thrills me to hear you say that. And that makes me very happy because those folks out there that might not be big Stryper fans, we're still trying to make them fans. And if we're accomplishing that, even with one person, that's awesome. We'll take it.
Yeah, man. Well, you got tour dates coming up or anything? What's happening?
Oh yeah, we're doing the Kiss Cruise. We leave next week, and then we're doing 2 nights at the Whiskey. First night sold out, and
when is that?
Then that is November 4th and 5th.
Oh, man. I'll come down and say, hey.
You should, man. We just added a second night. I think it's the 5th. You can go to Stryper.com to confirm that, but I believe it's the 5th. And we're playing a second night. Tickets are still available for that, but they're going quick. And, man, we'd love to see you if you come down. And then we're going to Mexico. We're doing a couple big festivals in Mexico with Kiss and Megadeth and Judas Priest and all these guys.
God, that's great, man. It's good. It's good to see you. And then you got Instagram, you guys social media people?
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Michael Sweet and Stryper. And yeah, man, we're very active. We like to keep our fans in the loop on everything. I'm on there daily, posting daily, always mixing it up with funny stuff. And, I got a weird sense of humor, so I'm always putting funny stuff up there. But yeah, man, we love it. We're still here. We're still alive. We're blessed. And we're not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think.
Are you a stand-up comedy fan?
I'm a big stand-up comedy fan, but I try to be. I'm a closet comedian, but sometimes my jokes don't go over too well.
What comics you like? You're a Christian, obviously, and everything, but can you watch edgy comedy? Yeah,
of course, absolutely. I watch any comedy, and right now I'm a big fan of the guy, and his name slipped in my mind, but he's hilarious. I think Italian guy.
Sebastian.
Dude, yeah, he's so funny, man. You know what it is with him? It's his mannerisms and his facial expression.
Yeah. He's great. I work with him quite a bit at the Comedy Store nightly.
Dude,
work with him.
I love that guy. I think he's brilliant, and and I go back to the old days. Obviously, Richard Pryor days. I mean, I'm a fan of if they're funny. If you're funny, I'm laughing. You know.
Yeah. All right. Well. Hopefully I'll get to see you down there at the Whiskey and I'll come say hi in person. And thank you so much for doing the show. And I will,
killer, man.
Yeah. And when's the record out?
It's out October 21st, this Friday. So, and it's called The Final Battle, and it is not our final album. at least that I'm aware of. And we're super pumped about it. We feel that we've done a good job, and we hope the fans agree.
All right. Thank you, man. And I'll see you out in LA.
All right, brother. Hey, great job. God bless you. And good luck out there on the road. Okay.
Thank you, man. I got 7 more dates, and then I'll be home hanging with my dog.
Great. Well, good. You know what? That's what you should be doing. That's the best, man. I love it. We're waiting to get a dog once we get into our new house, but we can't wait.
What are you going to get?
We're not sure. We're looking at Papillons, like a smaller dog.
Yeah. I got a French bulldog, small one.
Yeah, and our bass player has 2 or 3 French bulldogs.
Wow, really?
No, 2 Frenchies and 1 bulldog. But we're looking at a smaller breed, maybe a Papillon. We're not sure. We're gonna just kind of feel that out and play it by ear. Our last dog, Caleb, he's like a 65-pound mix, brindle-looking lab. He was a plot hound. Beautiful dog.
Awesome, man. Dogs are the best.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Love and miss our dog. And I can't wait. They bring spirit to the house that you just can't describe until you have a dog.
It's so true.
And I think they really do make you. They lengthen your life, not shorten your life. They remove the stress. They bring the stress levels down.
Yeah, saved me during COVID. That's for sure. All right,
no doubt.
Michael Sweet on Let There Be Talk. Get this new record. The Final Battle, and check out the tracks. The first 3 tracks are going to punch you in the face, man. Transgressor, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, same old story. And there's videos for them right now on YouTube. And I'm telling you, if you're into heavy music, you're going to dig this. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, brother. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay, I'll see you at the whiskey.
All righty.
See you, buddy.
See you, man.